So welcome. This is the Planning Your Fulbright Independent Research Project info session. We're getting ready to get started. The session is being recorded, so if you don't want to be recorded, you feel free to turn off your video. We will also share the PowerPoint slides that I'm going to be showing with you after the session is over, so that you don't have to take notes furiously or try to copy down all the links that I'm going to show you. So just to get going, a few preliminaries before we get started into the meat of the subject. Just before we get started, please mute your mic. At least the video is up to you. If you don't want to be recorded, you can. You're welcome to turn off your video. As I said, the session is being recorded. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to type them into the Q&A box as we go along, and then we'll leave time at the end for Q&A. The recording of the session, as well as the slides, will be posted on our Canvas site, and I'll come back towards the end of the session to talk a little bit more about exactly what that Canvas site is and how you can sign up and where you can find all of these goodies. Okay, so a little bit about myself. My name is Azumi Takata. I go by Ann, my middle name. I am a fellowships and grants advisor at the International Institute, and among my portfolio are some prestigious external fellowships programs like the Fulbright U.S. Student Program, the Fulbright Hayes Doctoral Dissertation Research Abroad, or DDRA program, the Fulbright Scholars Program. I also advise on a number of internal fellowships that are administered at the International Institute. I am a former academic, no longer practicing, but I do have an academic background, and so I do know something about doing research. I have a PhD in sociology, so that's my background. I've done both quantitative and qualitative research. I've done some. My dissertation topic was on a historical topic, so I also know something about doing historical research. In terms of the world region specialization, I have a master's in East Asian Studies with a Japanese Studies specialization. I'm also fluent in Japanese, so that's kind of where my perspective is. Although over the years, I've kind of expanded my regional portfolio to include the rest of East Asia, as well as Southeast and South Asia, then slowly expanding to other parts of the world as well. I am a proud Fulbright alumna. Back when I was in graduate school, I received a Fulbright Hayes Doctoral Dissertation Research Abroad Fellowship, and I spent 12 months in Japan doing research for my PhD dissertation. So that's my background. I've been advising the Fulbright U.S. Student Program for about, I think this is maybe year 5 or year 6 now, formally. I advise primarily students who work on the study research applications. Although I'm happy to talk to everybody who's interested in Fulbright. But that's kind of my background of where I come from to this enterprise called doing independent research. So the agenda for this afternoon is to kind of think a little bit about what's an independent research project, what does it mean to do an independent research project, what does it mean to do a good independent research project? What makes it good, as opposed to an okay or mediocre independent research project? There are some general principles, and then I also want to talk about the Fulbright's perspective on what's a good independent research project for a Fulbright application. This is very much a high-level overview. So we'll give you some general ideas. Ways to get started. So we'll talk about those kinds of things. And then really how do I go about finding, crafting, developing my Fulbright independent research project, and specifically talk about tips and tricks on how to get started. And then finally, I want to give you a whole bunch of resources that you can use to get going with this process. and give you a bunch of links, as well as useful websites and books, and other resources on campus that you can use in this process. Okay, so I'm going to start with why, in terms of why do you want to do an independent research project? Why might you want to do an independent research project with the Fulbright Fellowship? In terms of first long-term goals, you might be thinking about maybe eventually going to graduate school, or maybe you're already in graduate school and thinking about doing a research project, either as a part of your again, a master's thesis or a capstone project, or maybe a PhD dissertation. So that's a good reason for wanting to do research. Even beyond graduate school, you might be thinking about research as a profession or a career, and this would be a good way to kind of get real experience doing research and find out what it's like. Maybe you're interested in working on international collaborative projects, whether that be in research as in pure academic research, or maybe in terms of more of a practical, policy-oriented, problem-solving type collaborative project. All those are good reasons for long-term goals, and for those kinds of long-term goals. The Fulbright Independent Research Project is a good kind of a beginner's experience on how to go about doing this doing a research project and getting a hands-on experience in doing an independent research project. In terms of practicalities, what does it take to apply for the Fulbright U.S. student program with an independent research option? One of the things that you are going to have to do as you're preparing your application is to write a statement of grant purpose. And what the statement of grant purpose will do is to describe your research project and lay out your plans for the Fulbright year. What are you going to do when you're awarded the Fulbright grant? What are you going to do, and how are you going to spend the year that you're on the grant doing your research project? Some of the required elements of that statement of grant purpose is that you need to have a well-defined research topic that can be either kind of a general statement or a series of questions or hypotheses. You need to work out a methodology, which is essentially how you're going to go about answering your research question or testing your hypothesis. And then finally, a plan of action and a timetable for a Fulbright year. In other words, for the 9 to 10 months that you're actually going to be on the Fulbright grant and in a country doing research, exactly what are you going to do, and what's your plan to get from A to B, in other words, the beginning of your research project to the end product that you plan to have at the end of the project. So these are kind of the things to think about, where you want to get to in terms of planning a project. But even before we start thinking about planning a project, well, what does it mean to do an independent research project? So let's think about that and break it down. So first, the independent part. It means that you're on your own, well, mostly on your own. Because you're still students, we don't expect that you're going to be completely on your own, although for the most part, you are going to be on your own. And you're basically going to be in charge of your project. You get to make the key decisions, often in consultation with your mentors and advisors, but still, ultimately, you're in charge and you get to make the key decisions. It also means that you get to do all the work, good and bad. It means that you have to do all the work, and it also means that you get to do all the work. I will tell you that having done a lot of long-term research projects, sometimes this is kind of the joys of doing research, as well as the frustrating part about doing research is that, yes, you have to do all the work, and the work can be sometimes really exciting and interesting, and at the same time, at other times, it can be also exceedingly frustrating and never-ending, and all of that as well. But in the end, I think all in all, I think most of us who do research and come out of it successfully at the end think that The good parts definitely outweigh the bad parts and the frustrating parts, and the overcoming that frustrating part is part of the process of doing all of that research. Yes, it's independent. You're mostly on your own, but again, you will still have mentors, advisors, and colleagues that you're going to be working with. So independent doesn't necessarily mean that you're alone. You'll have other people to consult and people to advise you, but it does mean that you are making most of the decisions on your own, and you get to make the key decisions about your project. The second part, research. There are lots of different definitions of research. For students, up until now, you've mostly been a consumer of other people's research, and maybe not so much producer of your own research. But this is kind of the time to make that transition into consuming research to producing research. What does it mean to do research? Very broadly speaking, it means to answer a question or solve a problem, fundamentally to develop new knowledge. And then, of course, really the question becomes then, what kind of question, what kind of problem, what are good questions to ask for research, what are good problems to solve, what are critical problems that have to be solved. So this gets refined and narrowed down quite a bit, but fundamentally speaking, what it means to do research is to ask a question, pose a question, and then try to find answers for those questions, or to try to solve a problem, identify a problem, and to try to solve a problem. And all of this leading to developing new knowledge, things that we didn't know before, that we find out by doing research. And then finally, project. By defining research as a project, we're putting a time limit on it and kind of putting it in a defined context. And it also means that you have to have some sort of an end product and an end goal. You're going to have some results and some conclusions, and that you want to be able to analyze your results, come up with some conclusions, and to be able to summarize that in a maybe a formal document like a research paper or a journal article, or maybe even a book, if it comes down to that. But by saying that this is a project, we're putting a time limit and a well-defined kind of set of parameters around it to be so that it's something that you have. It has a starting point and a finishing point, and then an end point and an end goal with it. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about research. Here are a couple of different definitions of research. So one way to define research is formalized curiosity. It's poking and prying with a purpose. Kind of an interesting way of very informal definition, but it's one way to think about research. Another definition. The systematic study of materials and sources in order to establish facts and reach new conclusions. That's from the Oxford English Dictionary. Another way to think about research is the process of solving real world problems. And by that we mean identifying problems, examining the causes, proposing or developing solutions to those problems, and then implementing those solutions in the form of a new policy or program, and then evaluating the effectiveness of the newly implemented policy or program. So that's another way of thinking about research. In any case, research is a process and a journey. So in that sense, it's a journey and a process, and so there are steps to it. And so you have to plan your research. And that means designing your project. It also often means writing a proposal, and then applying for funding so that you can support the execution of that research project. And one form of doing that is, preparing and submitting your Fulbright application. And then there is a preparation phase. So even after you submitted your application, in between the time that you submit your application and find out whether you have the money or the grant or the fellowship to do the actual project that you propose to do. There's that time in between which you can use as a preparing period. And different people do different things, but you should definitely think about that period as a time that you can use to your advantage. You can always read more about your research topic. You can do a literature review. You can learn different methodologies that might be applicable to your research. If you need additional language study, and particularly in the context of Fulbright, honing your language skills so you can actually hit the ground running once you get to the country. So things that you can do pre-departure to prepare for actually executing your project and going there and starting right away so that you can hit the ground running. So think about that period between when you're actually done with your application, but in between the time that you submit your application and the time that you actually find out that you have you've been awarded the fellowship or the grant. Don't think about that time as dead time. Think about that time as preparation period that you can use to make progress on your project, so that when you are in fact ready to go, you're actually ready to go and you can hit the ground running. Okay. And then the next step, of course, would be that you find out that you actually have the grant and you're now in your execution phase. And this is where you actually get to leave for your host country and arrive and settle in and start doing your research project. That's really the fun part about this journey, probably more than anything else. And then finally, there's the dissemination phase, and that entails analyzing your results, drawing conclusions, and then summarizing those results and conclusions in a report. And if you're lucky, you get to publish that in like a journal article or a book. But in any case, the idea is that you're not keeping the results of the research just to yourself, but you're going to share that with other people who are interested in the same topics and research areas, so that you contribute your part of the work into furthering the common collection, the collective knowledge that we have about a certain topic, so that the next person who comes can build upon your research and take it from where you left off and continue on with the next step of your research. Okay, so think of research not just as a kind of a thing that you do, but it is really a journey, and it's a multi-step journey, and sometimes it can be quite a long bit. The Fulbright project itself is probably from the time you start thinking about applying to the Fulbright program to actually being done with it and coming back, we're talking about a 2.5 to 3 year process. So this is definitely a journey, and because it's a journey, it's not always straight from here, point A to point B, and you're going to meander and backtrack a little bit and go forward again and do all of that, and that's perfectly fine. That's kind of the way it works, and you should kind of think of research in that sense. Okay. So next kind of a thing that we want to think about is, well, now that we kind of know what it's like to do research and what it entails, what's a good research project as opposed to an okay research project or a mediocre research project? The first thing I have to say about that is that a lot of what's defined as good is very much discipline and topic specific. And so what is good research in one discipline may not be necessarily a good research in another discipline. Part of that has to do with the fact that there are some disciplines that are, if you think of disciplines as different kind of perspectives to look at a problem, or different colored lenses colored glasses that you might put on to see a particular, to take on a particular view of the world. If you put on different colored glasses, the world looks different, and there are certain things that pop out at you with the one color as opposed to a different color. And so some of the disciplines are sort of like that, and in some cases they're competing visions and priorities about what kinds of things or what kinds of topics and research problems are important, and what kinds of research methodologies are appropriate, and so on and so forth. And so very much what is a good research project depends very much on the particular discipline and the topic of research. But there are some general principles that we can think about that apply to all kinds of research projects. One has to do with the fact that good research asks good questions. And what do we mean by good questions? Intellectually exciting and interesting questions that sometimes we would call cutting edge. Obviously academically rigorous, in the sense that it follows proper academic procedures. It's aligned with the ethics of conducting academic research, and so on and so forth. Again, developing new knowledge is a big thing about doing research. The whole point of doing research is discovering something new. And in the more kind of the practical policy world, solving a real world problem and finding solutions to real world problems, and developing programs that can solve real world problems. Those are again qualities of the research projects that do these things well tend to be good research projects. So these are kind of the general principles. I also want to talk about what's a good research project for you. And in this sense, whatever research project that you use, it has to be right for you. And what we mean by that is that it has to be a good fit for your knowledge base, your academic preparation, and your background. You're not going to be able to do a research project for which you're not very well prepared. I mean, that's just a fact. And so you're going to have some sort of a base to build upon, and that foundation has to be your knowledge, your current knowledge base, academic preparation, and academic background. You obviously have to have some interest in the topic or the question. And I will say that interest and the excitement about the particular topic or a research question, this is going to be what's going to sustain you when the going gets tough. When you're kind of frustrated about the fact that you're bogged down in the particular point of your research project, what's really going to keep you going is that interest and the passion about a particular topic or a question. So obviously that's important. You have to have the right skill set to be able to do the actual experiments or the archival research or whatever it is that the methodology that you've chosen. You need to know the methodology, and you need to be able to apply it to the particular situation. So you have to have the right skill set. And in the context of Fulbright, that might also include that skill set might also include your language skills. And then finally, you want to be able to carve out your own little niche to call your own. Again, this is the part, going back to that independent research project part. The independent, it's independent in the sense that this is your own thing that you're going to call your own. This is your project and not somebody else's project or your advisor's project or your PI's project. This is your project that you're going to call your own. Okay. So then the question becomes, well, how do you find a good research project? This is probably the hardest part. If you haven't done a research project before, this is probably the hardest part. That's actually getting started and finding a good research project. So here's some kind of tips to get you started. One is that you will probably want to do some self-reflection. And it has to do, think about your academic interest, think about the courses that you've taken, term papers that you've written, research projects that you've done, and courses and other settings. And think about, what was, what sparks your interest, what was fun, what do you want to learn more about? Think about books you've read, the articles, the lectures that you've attended here on campus or elsewhere, things that pique your interest. What do you want to know more about? So as I said before, curiosity and intellectual excitement is really important. And so you want to be able to find something, a research question, a research area or topic that you're curious about, that you're excited about intellectually. And that's going to be a good starting point for you. And then once you have some ideas, do some preliminary research. Do a literature review. Go down to the library, talk to a librarian, do some research, with some of the databases that our library has. The library it has a wealth of resources to get you going. So a literature review essentially is a way to find out what research has been done previously on this topic. So what's out there in terms of published research, books, journal articles, other kinds of things that you can find that's been done on this topic. So you can see what research has been done. Part of doing research is finding new knowledge. So you kind of want to know, where's that boundary line between what we know already versus what we don't know. And so doing this literature review will kind of allow you to see, okay, what's been done before, and then what are the remaining questions? What questions are people asking that's still not quite answered yet? Another thing that you'll be able to find out by doing a literature review is who's actively working on this topic, whether it be here in the United States or throughout the world. Who's actively working on this topic? Who's publishing? And who is considered the leading authority in the field on a particular topic. Those are good things to find out, and then you can start looking at, okay, this person over here in this country is doing this kind of research. You can start thinking about those. As I said, the U of M libraries are a really good resource. It's a good place to start. Go talk to a librarian. They are an enormous resource that's available to you for free. And they love to talk to students about doing research. So go talk to a librarian and help and let them help you do this kind of research. And then eventually what you want to do is to develop your own research topic with a set of questions, research questions, and hopefully either questions to answer or hypotheses to test through some sort of an experiment. So that's what you want to end up. And that's that research topic, question, the hypothesis is going to be kind of the starting point of your research project. So that's where you want to end up. But to get there is sometimes if you don't know already what you want to do, what you want to study, or what you want to do your research on, sometimes this is the hardest part is to get started. But these are some of the tips to get you started. Later on, I'm going to come back and talk about resources, and there I will talk about a couple of books that I found to be particularly good resources that can literally walk you through this process of finding a good research project. So I'll come back and talk about that a little bit later. So in terms of practical starting points, as I said before, talk to the librarian. There are both subject specialists and world region specialists at our library. Both of them, you can look them up on the library website, and they're really there to help you. So go talk to them. Most of them are available for individual consultations, so you can email them, set up a time, and go meet with them. And they will talk to you about particular, topics. They can help you and teach you how to use library resources to do research, and they can help you started with your literature review. Some practical support, if you sort of have an idea of what you'll want to do or what kinds of topics you want to research, some starting points that you want to think about. If you've studied something in the United States, a research topic that you've done some research on in domestically, and one thing you can do is to think about doing a cross-national comparing. Does this particular process or this particular program work that works in this particular way in the United States? Does it work the same way in another country? Why doesn't it? And the extension of that is there something unique about a country that's not done here in the United States that we can learn about by going there and doing some research? That might be another way. And then the third way is, finding a research group that's already doing research that in an area that you're interested in, and see if you can hook up with them and be a part of that group for a short period of time. Those are some practical ways to get started in thinking about doing developing a research project and developing your own research project. All right. Mentors and advisors. This is really important. Yes, use your U of M network. There are enormous resources here on campus, and not just the library, but your professors here. And there are researchers here. Go talk to your previous course instructors or look up researchers on the U of M website. Most of the instructors here have a fairly extensive profile on their departmental home pages that kind of details what kinds of research they do and what kinds of topics they're interested in. If you find somebody who's interested in the same kinds of topics, contact them by email, go to their office hours, talk to them, and see if they can advise you, see if they can help you develop your research topic. Talk to them about who's doing exciting research on this particular topic, which universities are known for research in this topic, and then finally ask them, can you introduce me to a colleague or somebody who's working internationally who's working on this topic or a related topic? And it could be either, introduce me to somebody here on campus that I should go talk to, introduce me to somebody internationally who's doing research in this area that I can hook up to potentially for a Fulbright project. I think all of those are good questions and good reasons to go and see a faculty during their office hours. So yes, take advantage of the resources that are here on campus. Working with an existing research group, that's another way of hooking up and developing your Fulbright research project. There are many universities and departments and even research groups within universities that are open, that have ongoing research projects and have a group of researchers that are regularly working together and are open to short-term visitors like Fulbright Fellows. And particularly people like Fulbright Fellows, they come with their own money, so the research group doesn't have to pay them. And so they're very often open to having short-term visitors and are very welcoming. The advantage of hooking up with an existing research group is that you have a readily available group of colleagues and mentors who are interested in the kinds of things that you're already interested in, and an established research setup so that they can get you access to research resources, whether that be access to libraries, computing, or lab space, et cetera, et cetera. This is especially important for lab sciences, especially if you need a wet lab situation where you need to be running experiments. It's really important to hook up with an existing research group so you can get access to those things. But it can also work for many of the social science research projects as well. There are large-scale ongoing research projects in the social sciences that would welcome short-term visitors. What's important to remember in this case is that you're not going there to be a research assistant and doing other people's experiments for them, or just doing other people's experiments for them. You're there to go and work on your own independent research project, so that you need to carve out a little part of that ongoing research project, the larger project, one little piece that you can carve out on your own within that research group that you're going to call your own, that you can propose as as your Fulbright independent research project. So that's an important thing to remember, that you're not just going out there to be a helper, you're going out there to do your own project, and that you need to work out with the leaders of the research group to carve out an appropriate project that you can finish in about 9 months. That is, compatible with what the research group is already doing, but that's something that you're also interested in, that you can finish within the context of the Fulbright Fellowship. Okay. All right. Some practical considerations, particularly in the context of Fulbright. An independent research project, an independent research project application in an open study research Fulbright application requires a host institution affiliation and a host mentor. So you will need to be affiliated with some sort of an academic institution and have a host mentor in country that's going to basically serve as your point of contact and a host for your Fulbright. Most countries will take universities and a university as a host institution. There are countries that will only take universities as a host institution. Some other countries will take, in addition to universities, government research laboratories, nonprofit organizations, or private think tanks as also appropriate as a host institution. There are some variations, so do check the requirements for a particular country, and they will be listed in the affiliation section of the award description. So do check that to make sure that you're affiliated with the right kind of institution. The letter of affiliation may be required by the application deadline. Again, this will also be explained in the award description and the affiliation section. It'll say letter of affiliation required by the deadline. It might say the letter strongly recommended but not required. It's been our experience that even if the letter is not required, it is strongly recommended. It will always enhance your application if you can get one, even when it's not required for the application. So you will need. So this is part of the reason why it's a good idea to be thinking about a research project right now, because making the arrangements to get this letter of affiliation is can be a time-consuming process, and it does take more than a little bit of going back and forth by email or by Zoom calls or whatever to make these arrangements. I'm not going to talk too much more about the host affiliation right now, because in a couple of weeks I'm doing another info session on finding affiliations. So if you're interested in kind of a more nitty-gritty details of how to go about doing it, sign up for that info session, another virtual session, and we'll be talking specifically about finding host affiliations at that session. Other practical considerations about research. So in your research project, what you can and can't do may be limited by the availability of a host institution and a host mentor. So you might find that a particular person who's really, who you're really interested in working with and is really a specialist in the topical area that you want to work on, but he's going on sabbatical when you want to do a Fulbright. Well, that's not going to work for you. So, and at that point, you may need to pivot and find something else to work on, or you may have to find somebody else, have that person introduce you to somebody else who can be your host mentor for your Fulbright project. You may also need to alter your research project to fit, let's say if you're working with an existing research group that that might be the case. Even if you're independently, for the most part, independently designing your research project on your own, some of the things that you might want to pay attention to and discuss with your host mentor about are things like, what are some of the culturally sensitive topics and methodologies? Just because a topic is perfectly fine in this country, we tend to be very open about certain kinds of topics. Doing research because we, at least in this country, we believe in academic freedom, and we believe in being able to do research even on sensitive topics. But that's not always the case in every part of the world. And so there are some research topics that are culturally sensitive with certain kinds of research methodologies that might work here, but might not work or might be culturally inappropriate in other parts of the world. And these are things that you need to pay attention to. Another thing, politically sensitive topics. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can't do research in politically related topics, but you have to be careful about how to go about doing it. Remember that Fulbright is fundamentally a kind of a diplomatic program of the State Department, and so ruffling the feathers of the diplomatic partners on the other end, the host countries, is probably not a good idea. And so this is something that you need to take into consideration. There are ways to do politically sensitive topics, but you have to do it the right way, and you need to figure out how to do it, and that requires a lot of discussions with your mentors and advisors, both here and in this country, who are knowledgeable about the host country as well as your host mentors in country. Okay, something to keep in mind. Okay. So now that we kind of talked about the research project part of it, I want to talk a little bit about Fulbright's perspective on what it means to do an independent research project in the context of Fulbright. And there are several things to think about. First, academics. And the Fulbright's goals and interests in terms of academics are the same as any academic. The kinds of things that I've been talking about already about what does it mean to be doing a good, what does it mean to have a good research project academically? The Fulbright, believes in the same kinds of ideas. So it has to be intellectually interesting and exciting. It has to be academically rigorous. It has to build on a good foundation of existing research, and then has potential for interesting results and innovating solutions. And then one final thing, it has to have some broad interdisciplinary appeal in the sense that from the Fulbright's perspective, their interest is in not having you just complete a very narrowly focused research project, but to be able to share the results of the research project with a wider community, both in your host country and back after you come back, when you're back in the United States. And so in that sense, they would like a project that has a broad appeal to a lot of different kinds of people with different kinds of interests. And so projects that have broad interdisciplinary appeal tends to be more interesting from the Fulbright's perspective than a project that's very narrowly focused. It might be that might be academically exciting and interesting, and really great for a particular discipline's perspective. But if it's only interested in that narrow discipline, Fulbright may not be as interested in that kind of a project. So that's what academics. Feasibility. This is really an important aspect for the Fulbright, from the Fulbright's perspective in terms of a independent research project. And really, fundamentally, the question is, can you finish your project within the Fulbright timetable? And that's a really big, that's one kind of a big question. So the Fulbright in-country period is about 9 to 10 months. You have to think about the first couple of months of that time. You're going to need to settle in and start ramping up. Obviously, the sooner you can get going, the better off you are, and the more time you have to devote to your research. but settling in and ramping up. You also have to think about that the other end of the 9 to 10 months, you have to finish up and close shop and eventually, get out of there and come back to the United States. So think about the fact that the beginning and the ending period of your 9 to 10 months, you might not be operating at 100% focused on your research project. So realistically speaking, yes, it's 9 to 10 months in country, but maybe you have 6 months of real time that you're 100% focused on your research project. Can you actually finish your project within that time, in that kind of a timetable? And that's a thing that Fulbright pays attention to quite closely. Do you have the access to the right resources in terms of libraries, archives, the laboratory space and equipment? Can you travel in country to go where you need to go? That's another thing that Fulbright will consider. And finally, do you have the right skill set to actually complete your research project? Do you know the right research methods? Do you know how to do you know the right kinds of data analysis? Do you have access to the right kinds of do you know the right methodologies, and can you actually do the right kinds of data analysis so you can actually get to the conclusions? These are all questions about feasibility, and it has to do with, can you actually get your project done, and do you have the skill set to actually do the project that you say you were going to do? So this is one of the important aspects that Fulbright will look at when they're evaluating your project. And then relevance. And here the questions are, is the research topic appropriate for the location? Why do you need to go to this, your country, whatever country that is, to do this research work? Why do you have to be there? Is it something that specifically that you have to be in France or in Bulgaria or in India? Why do you have to be there to do this project? What is it about that country that makes it an appropriate place, the good place to do your research project? That is an important aspect of that Fulbright will look at in evaluating your project. Now, there are certain awards that have restrictions and preferences in terms of what kinds of projects, research projects they're willing to consider, and those will be written out in the award description page on the Fulbright National website. So once you kind of have candidates of where you'd like to go, make sure you go and read those award descriptions and pay attention to those descriptions of the candidate profiles and the host affiliations, what's required, and you will see that there are certain countries that have some restrictions and preferences in terms of research topics, disciplines, and things of that sort. So these are important things to pay attention to. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about the Fulbright's mission and how your research project might align with the Fulbright's mission. And this is kind of in the back of the minds of the Fulbright people as they are looking at your project in the selection process. Will your project enhance the U.S. relationship with the host country? And the flip side of that is, will this project potentially have a negative consequence with negative consequence for the American relationship with the host country? And that's probably not something that they want to support. If there are potential serious negative consequences on the bilateral relationship between the U.S. and the host country. So that's, again, something that they keep in the back of their mind. Is this project going to enhance the relationship? The projects that do, obviously, are the projects that are more interesting to Fulbright. Will this project lead to future collaborations and long-term working relationships with the host mentor and the host institution? That's another thing that they're interested in developing, these long-term exchanges and collaborative relationship between you and wherever it is that you end up career-wise, after Fulbright, and the host mentors and the host institution that you're going to be working with during your Fulbright year. Again, Fulbright is it's a grassroots diplomatic program, and they're interested in developing these long-term relations. And so projects that contribute towards developing those relationships are the projects that Fulbright will be interested in. Okay. All right. So that's kind of the my big spiel about what does it mean to do a research project, how to get going, and what's the Fulbright's perspective. So now I want to talk a little bit about resources that are available to help you in this process. All right. First, general Fulbright resources. In terms of what's on the Fulbright website. So the Fulbright U.S. student program has what's called an alumni ambassador program. These are students who have successfully gotten the Fulbright grant and have actually done their Fulbright experience and come back and have been selected by IIE, the organization that manages the Fulbright program on behalf of the State Department. They have been selected to serve as ambassadors to spread the word about Fulbright and talk to potential applicants about what their Fulbright experience is like. And so they now have about, I think, 15 years worth of alumni ambassadors. They're all listed on the Fulbright website. And you can contact any of them, and there's a brief profile of what they've done and what they've done on the website that you can read about, and you can contact any of them and say and ask them questions about and they try to have a kind of a wide variety. So they have students who've gone to different countries, done different projects. And you can read their descriptions of what they've done and contact them and ask them questions about how did you go about finding your research project? How do you how did you find your host affiliation? You can ask those kinds of questions. So that's one resource. Another resource, also on the U.S. Fulbright U.S. Student Program website, there's the wider grantee directory. This is the list of all of the Fulbright U.S. Student Program fellowship recipients going back to the 1940s, late 1940s, the origin of the program. You can at least get their name, which country they went to, and what kind of an award they had, whether they had an English teaching assistantship or an open study research award. And for those, the recent ones that had gotten an open study research award, you can usually get their project title. And for the recent, I would say the last maybe 20 or 30 years or so, you can, if they apply through a university, you can get their university affiliation. So you can go and search for the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor Fulbright recipients going back all the way to 1948 or 9, I think, which is the first year we had one, and find out who had them, where they went. And you will not be able to find contact information for these people on this website, but for U of M people, you can come back to our own resources here and go through M Community, and so you can find a unique name and contact them that way. So that's another resource. The third resource I'm going to mention is the Fulbright Scholar Directory. The Fulbright Scholar Program is the counterpart program of the for people who are no longer students. In other words, they've graduated and they're done with their education. This is the Fulbright grant for working professionals. So faculty and staff, as well as working professionals who have is at least about 5 to 7 years of work experience, and then apply to the Fulbright program to go do a year of teaching and research. And in this directory, you will find actually the U.S. scholars who have gone abroad, as well as foreign scholars who have come to do research in the U.S. And so you can search them again by where they went, what discipline they are, and what countries they went to, what disciplines, and which universities they're from, as well as which universities they were affiliated with while they're on their Fulbright. And because you have them going both ways, U.S. scholars going abroad, as well as foreign scholars coming here, you have this resource of people who have done Fulbright that you can contact. You can try and see if you can find and contact and ask them. For U.S. scholars, who did you have as your host? How did you find out? And then for foreign scholars, about are you willing to be a host now that you've had your Fulbright experience? Will you be a host? Would you be willing to be a host for me so I can have my Fulbright experience? So these are resources for finding scholars who are interested in the kinds of things that you're interested in the countries that you're interested in, and that can be just the starting point of finding your host affiliation. Okay. Now, in terms of our own U of M resources, specifically related to Fulbright, we have our website, our Canvas site, as well as advisors. We're available by email as well as by individual appointment. And here's a link to your advising appointment calendar where you can self-schedule an appointment. And we do see students both virtually and in person. And we do advising basically between now and the campus deadline at the end of August. So if you want to talk about your ideas, please, feel free to email us, make an appointment, and talk to us. I will say that as Fulbright advisors, we're not we can't really give you advice on specific discipline-related, kind of the nitty-gritty nuts and bolts of your research topic, whether that makes sense in terms of the particular context of the discipline. And whether it's a good project is this a good economics project? Does this make sense? Does this research question make sense? Is this an interesting, economics research question? Those kinds of questions we're not able to answer. The best resources for those kinds of questions are your mentors and advisors and professors that you've taken courses with. That know the field and can advise about the field. But what we can do here through the Fulbright office here is to kind of help you figure out the strategy about who might be a good person to talk to, to kind of work through the thought process of who on campus you might be able to go talk to, what other offices on this campus might have resources to help you get going, those kinds of things. Okay. And then finally, some project planning and writing resources. I want to mention the Sweetland Writing Center. They do have some consulting services, one-on-one consulting services for both undergraduate and graduate students. And those are good places to get going. And this is particularly a good resource for graduate students because graduate students can sign up for a writing workshop and writing a fellowship application and essays for fellowships applications is one of the things that they work with you on through the writing workshop when the funding application is related to your degree. So that's definitely a resource. And Sweetland will do everything from kind of organizing your thoughts about how to go about doing this kind of a process, as well as the actual nuts and bolts of writing your research statement of grant purpose. And then I'm just going to mention three these books that I find to be good resources for thinking about your research project and developing your research question and writing your research statements. So Essential Guide to Doing Your Research Project by Zena O'Leary. Zena O'Leary is a sociologist, really good guide for I think social sciences and maybe even into the sciences. Not so good so much for the humanities. The Craft of Research, this is one of the University of Chicago Press series and on writing. This one is geared a little bit more towards the humanities than social sciences, but it does work for a lot of different fields, but probably one of the better books for the humanities. And then finally, Where Research Begins. This is a great book if you have absolutely no idea where to get started and you don't even have an idea of how to go about even figuring out what a good research question is and what's going to work for you. And this is a great book for you. This is kind of a do-as-you-go type book where they will talk about a topic and then give you tasks to do to help you go get along so that you can actually get to where you need to get to. And so this is one of the books that I really like for if you really have no idea how to get started. This is actually a good one to get started with. All three of these books are available through the library. I think you can get electronic versions of all of these books through our library. And I think all of them for free. So these are all really good resources. And I really recommend all of these as kind of good places to start. I will say about all of these research guides and books that there are lots of them out there. Some of them are better than others. A lot of that has to do with what works for you. And just because I like them and I find these resources to be good doesn't necessarily mean that it might work for you. But and there are others out there besides these three books that talk about how to go about doing research and putting your research project together and writing research proposals. And so part of it is finding the right guidebook to help you along. But these are three good books, quite different from each other, both in terms of their writing styles and the way they do things, and are all good ways to get started. So this is kind of a sample of what's out there that you might be able to use to get started on your own project. Okay, so talked about a lot of things. Just in summary, kind of key takeaways. As I said, research is a journey. It does take some planning. It does meander quite a bit. So you will kind of, take 2 steps forward, 1 step backward, and then, take a sideway, side journey into something, find out that that's a dead end, have to backtrack and start over again. Those things happen. It is a journey, but so it is a process, and you kind of have to, learn to enjoy that process along the way. You will need to find a good research topic, a good research question or hypothesis. That's what will get you started on the way to a good research project. And it has to be the right project, and it has to be right for you. In the context of the Fulbright, it has to be right for you, it has to be right for the host country, and it has to be right for the host mentor in an institution. Work with your mentors and advisors, both in the discipline and all of us in the Fellowships Grants Office. And again, use your U of M network to your advantage. You have a lot of resources here. This is part of the reason why we're fortunate to be affiliated with the U of M. We have good resources here, and take advantage of your resources and make the U of M network work for you. Okay. All right. One final thing I want to mention. Some upcoming Fulbright info sessions. So as I said, I'm doing another session specifically on finding affiliations on Monday, April 22nd. And you can sign up for that, register for that, and we'll talk extensively about different methods and resources that we have for finding affiliations. And then probably sometime in May, I will also be doing something more nitty-gritty focused on the actual writing of the research statement of grant purpose. That's not quite scheduled yet, but it is on our agenda that we need to schedule that. And so that'll be coming sometime in May. And once we have that scheduled, we'll have that posted on our website, and we'll have announcements for that as well. All right, so I am going to stop the presentation here, and I do want to kind of show you really quickly what some of these websites are that I talked about are, and just give you just a little bit of a feel. I'm going to stop sharing here for the minute and share a different screen. Okay. I want to show, okay, this one is, okay, hold on just a second. It's not what I want to do here. Okay, now, here, okay, all right, so, here we go. And so this is, as I said, we have, this is our website, the International Institute website, and the Fulbright U.S. Student Program page on our website. And you can see that we have upcoming info sessions listed here. So there's our Finding Affiliation session. You can register for it here. Scroll down a little bit for, this is the other key part that I want to mention. Please, if you haven't done this already, sign up to receive, sign up so that you can be part of our email list. And then this is the link to our Canvas site. So if you click on that, that will get you to our Canvas site. And then again, advising information and a link to our advising calendar here as well, where you can sign up for an advising appointment. Okay. So this here, this is the Fulbright U.S. Student Program website. I want to show you here first. This is actually in the alumni section here. And if you pull up the alumni section, this is the alumni ambassadors page. And this is the latest set of ambassadors for 2024. These are the people who just finished and got selected. And so you can find out more about them. And you will see that there are, as I said, about 15 years worth of alumni ambassadors, and they're all willing to talk to you about their Fulbright experience and what they did and how they went about doing their Fulbright experience. So that's all there. And then underneath that also you will find a grantee directory. This is the recipients of the U.S. Student Program, and you can go in this. I will tell you that this particular web page can be wonky sometimes, and because it's loading a database and it doesn't always load correctly. So I am going to make this thing reload and see if we can actually get it to work. Maybe not. Okay. All right. So it does. Okay. So you will see that the search result, 68,490. That is the entire set of the Fulbright U.S. Student Program recipients going back to the inception of the program in the late 1940s. And you can see that there's the name, the institution, their home state, field of study, where they went in the year. And you can search for them using this information here. And so you can drop down here and search for the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. It's in alphabetical order, so we go all the way down, back up a little bit more, University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, and you can do a search and see that there are 998 so far through 2023 in all of this. And So you can find out who all of our recipients are. As I said, if you look at these individual individual data, you can see this is the year, the university, the state field of study, when she's in Romania, and the proposal summary, which is basically the title of their project. You can find that information here. So that's another way to get going. The other thing I want to show you, this is the website for the Fulbright Scholars Program. As I said, this is for the scholars, the faculty and staff, and working professionals. Again, here in the, if you see Connect, under Connect, you'll see the scholar directory. And okay, all right, try that again. Let's see if we can get that to work. No, oh, okay. All right, that's too bad. Okay, so this is why this is, okay, search the Fulbright Scholar Directory. Oh, no, okay. Anyway, so it doesn't want to work here today, but the Scholar Directory is here. And again, this is a searchable directory where you can search for scholars, both the outgoing scholars, the American scholars who have gone to do research abroad, as well as international scholars who have come to the U.S. to do research. And again, this is another resource for you.